Chapter 16 in your beginning AutoCAD workbook. Our drawings or put measurements on them. So we want to understand what associative dimensioning is, create linear, continuous, and baseline dimensions, draw, select, and erase objects, use grips to manipulate our dimensions, create a new dimension style. That one's really important. You're going to use it for all the rest of the lessons. And ignore hatching when dimensioning. So before we even start dimensioning, I'm going to show you right off the bat, please do not use this button, Quick Dimension. Later on, after you're really good at dimensioning, if you want to use it, go ahead. But for now, please don't use Quick Dimension. We want to use Annotate and all the dimensions here on our dimensioning palette. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do, our lesson talks about associative versus non-associative dimensioning. So in your command line, type in DIM ASSOC. So we want it to be associative. The value for that is 2. So 2, enter. If we didn't want it associative, it would be 1. So I'm going to show you what happens when we create things using associative dimensioning. Okay, so let's say I've created that object. Another important thing when you're dimensioning, always use your dimension layer. So I'm going to use a linear dimension. So I picked linear and it says select first extension line origin. So where do I want my dimension to start? I want to start there, then where do I want it to end? I want it to end here, and then where do I want this dimension to sit? I want it to sit here. So same thing on this side. Okay, so I've created a dimension and it's associative. So what that means is if I change this box, the dimension is going to change with it. If I had my dimensioning as non-associative, so DIM ASSOC, value of 1, this time when I dimensioned it, and you have to be careful when you're dimensioning that you actually pick the point you want to pick. Okay, so this time if I change this, my dimensions aren't going to move with it. So make sure dim assoc is set to 2. Okay, so like we said, we don't want to use quick dimensioning. So let's take a look at some of the kinds of dimensioning that we can use. So remember back when we did blueprints, we went over a bunch of different types of dimensioning. So here they are. So on our Annotate panel, on our Dimensions, Annotate tab, Dimensions panel, this is our basic dimensioning tool. We have linear, aligned, angular, length, radius, diameter, and then some extra ones called jogged and ordinate. We're just going to look at a couple of basic ones for this lesson. So linear, continue, and baseline. Let's start with those. So linear dimension, make sure that you're on your dimension layer. I'm going to pick the point I want my dimension to start, the point I want it to end, and where I want my dimension to sit. Same thing on this side. So linear dimensioning is really straightforward. Down along the bottom bar here, there's a couple more options. So we have continue. Continuous creates a dimension that starts from an extension line of a previously created dimension. So let's say I have put a linear dimension here, but I want to put the rest of these in. I could just make more linear dimensions or select continuous, and then just click the points where I want my dimensions to be. So under that continuous, there's a little drop down for baseline. So baseline continues a linear, angular, or coordinate dimension from the baseline of the previous dimension. So if I put my linear dimension here, select baseline, it knows for these next dimensions that from the same baseline as the first one. Your two other ones that are really simple and straightforward. Let's take a look at, I'm just going to draw a circle here. Let's take a look at diameter and radius. Okay, so under that linear button, diameter, and depending on what sort of a dimensioning style we have set up, it'll affect how these look, and we'll see later how to change these. But for now, we're just going to go with this. It's not the settings that I would like it to look like, but we're just going to use the preset one, and later on I'll show you how to change them. So your diameter is always going to have the diameter symbol on it. Radius is always going to have the little r, the radius sign on it. Okay, so those are simple, straightforward dimensioning. You can also find this basic dimensioning tool on your home panel under annotation. There's that quick dimension button. Don't use it. It'll just give you a headache for now. Don't use it. Use these ones. Okay, so that takes you through the first few pages of your chapter 16 in your workbook. The second part of the lesson talks about dimension styles. So under dimension styles, page should be 16-9 in your workbook. I guess it's now 16-8. It's going to get you to create a new dimension style. So to create a new dimension style, you have to go to the Annotate tab, the Dimensions panel, and click the little flyaway button. So you're going to have this pop up, Class Style, Dimension Style Manager, and you're just going to see Standard. So you're going to want to select New, give it a name. I'm going to hit cancel here since I've already made mine, but call it Class Style, and then continue. So I'm just going to hit modify on my class style to walk through the settings with you. Okay, so 16-9. Step number 8, we want to start at the Units tab. We want decimal, we want zeros, 3 decimal places under precision. We want to turn off leading, make sure trailing's off. After that, we don't want to hit OK yet. And I'm doing this all in inches. If you're doing metric, follow along with the other option in the book. After that, we want to go to lines. So we want these first 3 all to say by block. We want our spacing to be 0.5. We want all of our extension line information to be by block. We want extend beyond dim lines set to 0.1. And we want offset from origin to be 0.0625. Okay. After that, we want to go to symbols and arrows. We want these three to say closed filled. We want our arrow size to be 0.125. We want our center mark to be none. Break size is 0.125. Arc length, preceding dimension text, jog angle 45, and 1.5 for the jog height factor. After that, we want to go to the text tab. We want our text style to be standard, color by block, fill color none, height 0.125. Placement, we want centered, centered, left to right. Alignment, we want horizontal. Offset from dim line should be 0.06. The next one is fit. Under fit, we want either text or arrows, best fit. We want beside the dimension line. We want use overall scale of 1. And once you've done that, then you can hit OK. Click your class style, say Set Current, and close. So you're going to be doing that in your Border A file. So you want to make sure you open up your Border A file, click the Dimensions tab, fly away, create your class style dimension, and resave your Border A file so that it has all of your dimensioning set up for you from here on out. Okay, so sometimes you'll be dimensioning something that has hatching in it. And a lot of times when you're dimensioning something with hatch in it, if you're going quick, you kind of end up by accident grabbing the hatch sometimes instead of what you actually want to grab. So let's say I wanted to dimension to the end of it, but I accidentally got my hatching instead. So to keep it from doing that, what you want to do is go into Options. So type Options in. Go to your Drafting tab and make sure that Ignore Hatch Objects is selected. Okay, that'll just make your drawing life, dimensioning life a little bit easier. So remember, we don't want to use quick dimension. We want to use the dimension tools, and we want to have our dimensioning all associated. So dimassoc equals 2. That's the end of the tutorial for Chapter 16.